We know when someone's giving us bullshit. All disruption is not created equal. The same thing happens with brands every day. We are showing up without a soul, without a pulse, without a viewpoint, without a set of values. Every story has a shelf life. Some are for the long game, some are like short micro campaigns. If any of us say he or she sells like a car salesperson, that's not a compliment.
David Brier, we're getting together today, the slayer of the mundane with the disruptive influence. Let's go. Let's dive right in. What do CEOs, what do brand stewards need to know about branding and standing out today?
Well, that with all of the shiny objects of AI and all of this stuff that they can now do in a nanosecond, and they can become kind of like a one-person version of the Avengers to their own brand, they must realize something. If that comes at the cost of their actual differentiation and having an unmistakable, unapologetic assault on what people expect, then all the stuff that they're pounding out is worthless. And it should simply be flushed down the toilet at the nearest bathroom next to their office. Come on.
That's not descriptive at all. David, how important is storytelling for brands today? It's always been a massive thing historically. How important is it going forward?
The bottom line is that this is what I call the wall of beige. Right now, there is an insanely large wall of beige. What do I mean by beige? I mean the same sounding stuff or the same looking AI, pounded out crap, videos, this, that, the special effects. Ooh, I can use this one or I can use that one or whatever's the technology du jour, because every day there's only about 50 or more new breakthrough things that are going to revolutionize your workflow on boom, 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 boom. And yes, look, getting out stuff is vitally important. But if the focus is, hey, just pounding out, if you were to be honest with yourself, step back and you look, it's like, how does our stuff actually rank? Does our stuff have a soul? Does our stuff have a pulse? Does our stuff actually have a set of values that we can feel? We know when someone's giving us bullshit. We know when we ask somebody, it's famous in gazillion movie scenes where someone shows up for a job interview and they're asked a question, and the answer they give is so vanilla and shallow and off the script of what they were told to say that meeting is going to come to a very rapid close with that person leaving without an offer. The same thing happens with brands every day. We are showing up without a soul, without a pulse, without a viewpoint, without a set of values, without the willingness to finally say hell no to something else. So it's really clear what we are saying hell yes to. And that kind of clarity, that conviction that we can feel. I have a standard whenever I do a keynote that if I have failed to singe your eyebrows by the time that I'm done talking, I have not succeeded, because I want to be a fire breathing. I want to be a blowtorch of truth that cuts through the shallow bullshit. Why haven't we asked 5 more questions when we've asked the simple, obvious one and haven't broken down deeper, where all of a sudden we go, whoa, it's like the masseuse that really finds that spot and leans in and we're going, holy shit. That is the moment. Why should any brand stop short of that moment? Any brand that's doing that is leaving money on the table. They're not opening anyone's heart. They're leaving minds and eyes closed.
David, why is it more risky for brands to take no risks at all?
Even though we all love to go to an ice cream parlor and have our ice cream sundae, it's not the vanilla that we get excited about. It's the freaking hot fudge on top of it, okay? And if you're just showing up giving scoops of vanilla, someone's going to come over with a slightly better vanilla. At the end of every day, we have a choice. Are we going to be the ones to retire our story? Or are we going to get so complacent that someone ends up retiring it for us? It's that simple. Every story has a shelf life. Some are rooting for the long game. Some are like short micro campaigns, micro stories, little snippets, vignettes. And that's cool. But there overall needs to be, what do we stand for? What's the thing? If you were to say, hey, do you like Star Wars? The majority of people love the movie, loves the Star Wars, the whole Star Wars saga. But why is it we love the first two? And then the other ones, that was great. Oh, and then there was this one that was okay. And then there was Rogue One, and but the thing is, it's spotty because they didn't approach it with the same freshness. They relied on the prior stuff. They relied on the prior affiliations that we had, the loves that we had with certain characters and their missions and their defiance and how rogue they were, or how rebellious they were, or how obnoxious they were, or how stupid they were, or whatever. But there's a freshness there. And the thing is like, bring your freshness every day. It's kind of like, be a donut, be a cronut, okay? And if you're going to show up a little bit stale, like the cronut from 3 days ago, it was great 3 days ago, but it's not as good as the one that just came out of the oven fresh this morning. So be freaking oven fresh. Be the cronut.
That's a question of novelty. Where do you stand on freshness versus familiarity?
Familiarity is nice, but I would replace the word freshness with surprise and delight. To me, familiarity is kind of like, ooh, that's cozy, that's warm. There are elements that I am familiar with that I know how to interact with. Now, if everything's like that, then that's just a replay. It's a rerun. But if we have that familiarity and we have that element of like, ooh, I didn't see that coming. Whoa, what did you put in this freaking hot chocolate, man? This shit's on fire. That little element where it's like, if I feel that you can see around corners, that's exciting, because now you have, I cover this in brand intervention. I see, look, there's this element of, there's the known, there's the unknown. The known is the familiar. The known is the predictable. Then there's the unknown. What's the unknown? The surprise, the delight, the, ooh, I didn't see that coming. And the, ooh, I didn't see that coming is the stuff that keeps me and customers coming back. Because if I know that you're always going to surprise me and delight me, first of all, I must be important enough for you to be able to continuously be thinking up that shit, for you to actually like come up, damn, you always surprise me. You always delight me. You always give me that little bit extra that I didn't ask for, but I cherish. And it may not even be the thing that I buy. It may be the way that you package the stuff when I walk out of your store. Or it may be the way that you package stuff that when it gets shipped to my home, that I open it up and I'm like, God, you guys are awesome. You always do that one extra thing. That's the stuff that's magic. The familiarity will not necessarily keep me coming back. The surprise will, though. So the known has its role, but the unknown equally has its role. And if there's a brand that's like 100% known and 5% unknown, they will be dethroned quickly and easily, because the company that comes along and gives you 70% known but 50% unknown. Ooh, what you got today? What you got this time? That's going to be the one that I'm going to keep coming back to, because now you've incorporated the element of an adventure into that experience.
Isn't it interesting that you touched on the expectation of pattern disruption? Yep. The expectation of experience, the expectation of a physiological reaction. Let's lean into the physiological reaction that we're looking for, because we are people selling to people.
Yeah.
brand and perception and differentiation, all these things layer on in products and services. We are getting a chemical rise out of people. Talk to me about that chemical change in people that you strive for when you're working with brands.
I love that. Okay, so let's take something that almost probably the majority of your listeners will have experienced. Almost everybody has experienced opening up an iPhone box. Now let's look at this.
Hang on, I want to do the sound effect. I want to do the shh. There we go.
So the iPhone box is an engineering phenomenon. It's freaking perfect, right? It's perfect. It's not pretty good. It's not like any other box of any other company. It's like you slip it off and you get the of air. It slips off perfectly. The corners are technologically perfect. They have their thickness. You open up, and then there's the little plastic thing with the little tongue that you just pick up like a little Indiana Jones discovery. And you pick it up and you look inside. Now let's look at all this. Let's look at this. In what I've just described, there is familiarity. There is the delight. There's also the surprise. Why is there surprise? How could surprise and familiarity coexist? I'll tell you. Because everyone else is not doing it. Everyone else is lazy. So that familiarity is a differentiator. That surprise is a differentiator. That continuity of, I experience it every time I do an upgrade to my iPhone. I go through the same freaking ritual and the same, isn't this the baddest ass thing? Any potentiality for buyer's remorse, it's gone. It's gone. Anybody that takes that much time to just make the box flawless and everything else just perfectly in place, nothing's, oops, it slid in the shipping. Any brand that anticipates our activity is a brilliant brand. It's a genius brand. There's something that when I had my masterclass for brand intervention, and I would put people through that, I said, what's the difference between the practitioner, the professional, and the genius? There's 3 different columns, okay? Even if they were all doing the same thing and producing, quote unquote, the same output. What's the difference between these 3? We have the practitioner at the lowest end. We have the professional in the middle. We have genius at the end, on the outside, on the farthest, highest realm. What's the difference? It is this: the amount of, and I'm using this as an asset, the amount of future, air quotes for those that are just listening to this, the amount of future incorporated into each. What do I mean by that? So the practitioner may produce, let's say they're producing, let's just go to a restaurant. And they're producing a burger. The burger at the practitioner level, it could be a good burger, good quality meat, nicely done, caramelized well, the bun's done right, this, that, the other, and that's fine, and there you go, and it ends up being on the plate, and there you go. That's fine. Good. Now the professional, though, so they produced the one on the one end, practitioner. Now we go to professional. Professional's going to produce the burger, and he's going to go, what's going to happen that when the person gets it, they maybe have done a little 1 or 2 things that are going to make it a little more kind of like, make sure it arrives at the right temperature when it gets to the plate, and it's plated a little bit nicer, and this, that, the other. And that's fine. That's cool. And then the last one, the genius, they're going to do this, but when you bite into it, there's this ingredient in there that has a little bit of crunch and a little bit of just that little spark of like, ooh, a little vinegary, boom, that kind of just makes you go, whoa. And that brings out the flavor of the caramelized onions, that then brings out the flavor of the special, Dijon infused, and all of a sudden your mouth explodes with new flavor. The difference between each of those was the amount of future. The first person, it's like, okay, what's the amount of future? It's like, well, it left the kitchen and it arrived at the table. That was how much future was incorporated. The professional, on the other hand, was like, okay, they plated it nicer so that they knew that when the person looked at it, it actually would look pretty tasty, all that stuff. The genius anticipated even more future. that when it actually not only got there and looked great and was the right temperature and everything like that, when they bit into it and then they actually ate it, all of a sudden it like exploded into a whole new elements of their taste buds all of a sudden rediscovered one another like a reunion tour. All of a sudden it's like, we're back together, guys. Yeah. You still play that guitar? I sure do. Okay, dude, let's hit it in E. All right. Literally the amount of future. The greatest practitioners that we've ever seen choose your athlete, choose your entrepreneur, choose your innovator, choose your chef, choose your artist, choose your writer, choose your movie director. You will notice the greatest of those has the greatest amount of future. They anticipate how we will interact with it. They anticipate not only how we will interact with it at immediate point of contact, but 3, 4, 5 steps down the line. It's like, how did they know that when I was done with the meal, that when I then ate that little thing on the side of the dish, that would make my mouth go, holy shit, that was the most amazing meal I've ever had? How do they know these things? Because more and more and more future. Guaranteed, anyone listening to this, you can take any of those, athlete, artist, entrepreneur, innovator, writer, actor, whatever, you will find the great, like freaking, why do people like laugh their asses off when they watch Robin Williams? He put so much future into it. It's like all you had to do was practically say, give him 2 or 3 syllables, half of a word, and he was already into a whole new universe that he had. And so the amount of future, that one is a keeper.
You're talking about a lot of stuff that has to do with the 5 senses and more.
Yeah.
Right? We could probably add on to that around intuition and energy and all these extra things. Yeah. What is it about these brands who actually get that idea of future experience? What is it that they get about invention and intuition and improvisation and mixing it all up into this expectation, again, an expectation experience? And I'll wrap up that question with, you're reminding me even back to the apple corners. How you do anything is how you do everything. And that really represents everything you're talking about there. But I want to know, what are these brands doing that they're so tuned into the human experience? How come some do? How come some don't? And the ones who aren't, and who might be listening, how can they lean more into that?
Love the question. I would say in my new book, Rich Brand, Poor Brand, there's a chapter called Fanatical Intention. Fanatical Intention. You look at any brand that you love. I challenge anyone to be listening to this. Literally right now, think of what's the brand that you love, that you're just like, anytime they come out with a new product, I got it. New flavor, new product, new this, new that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what is it? There's a fanatical intention that hits you, hits me. We feel it. The majority of businesses are just showing up. I use this as a very simple example. Let's say I had a retail brick and mortar store, and on the sign outside, it said 9 to 5. We open at 9, close at 5. And every day, you know what? I open promptly at 9, and every day I close promptly at 5. Do you think anybody's going to be freaking like, whoa, I can't wait to do business with them? They're amazing. Do you know how consistent they are? They're incredible. They always open at 9. They always close at 5. That's incredible. No one, zero. No one will celebrate that. It doesn't display fanatical intention. What if it was like, hey, by the way, if you're only available before 9, and if you're only available after 5, here's my number. And by the way, if you do that, I'm always going to show up either with hot apple cider, or I'm going to show up with your favorite espresso drink. And you just need to tell me the recipe, and I will make it for you. Which one do you think is going to actually get people talking? Sometimes it's an extraordinary effort, but sometimes it's an ordinary effort. I'll give you an example. Doubletree Hotels. Last I had heard, they make 83,000 chocolate chip cookies a day for their guests when they arrive. So when their guests arrive, They take that chocolate chip cookie, they pop it in the freaking microwave oven and zap it for 25 seconds. They pull it out, and that person goes, ah. The amount of free social media exposure they get from people going with their freaking chocolate chip cookie. Last I heard, and this was some years ago. So maybe they're up to 120,000 a day. Maybe they're up to 175,000 a day. But now that's a very small little gesture. What makes it remarkable? The fact that nobody else is freaking doing it. We have to look. What is the benchmark that has been established by the industry standard? With regard to that benchmark, what of that is a point of annoyance on the part of customers? Okay, you can go, okay, well, they hate when blah, blah, blah happens. Well, why the hell don't you turn that into your freaking North Star of we're gonna convert that into our superpower, or we're gonna now turn that into an asset? Fanatical intention. The kind of questions that you ask of yourself will determine whether or not you have fanatical intention. Don't seek to meet expectations. That is a failure. If you're enjoying the conversation, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because it's these kinds of honest conversations that make all the difference. It would mean the world to me. Appreciate you tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the conversation. Meeting expectations is a failure. 1,000%. Wow. I expected someone to help me, and they did. Okay. For those that are only listening to this, I just gave Jeff the look of death. I'm like,
It was very ho-hum.
Extremely ho-hum, as in no pulse ho-hum.
I almost checked in on you there. I was like, David,
I know.
Come back to us.
He was about to call the medical examiner. We need an ambulance sent over there.
Don't go towards the light, David. Come back to us. We still need you.
That's right. That's right. We're not done yet. When we're done, I'll tell you when you can go. But right now, you're busy. We're talking.
If you don't go out bigger than this, middle of my podcast, you've done something wrong, my man. You've earned such a much bigger fire-breathing, blazing exit. So
yes.
Maybe we can get fanatical about that. Well,
are the questions you're asking of yourself and your brand and your company and your team, is it pushing them well beyond the norm, N-O-R-M, the norm, the benchmark of expectation? Those benchmarks will always be lower than what makes people thrilled. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be, okay, that's an acceptable minimum. No, that is not an acceptable minimum. That is a disaster. I jokingly have a thing that I sometimes tell my wife. I said, I had to stop by this place to pick up some food for us. She goes, how was it? I said, well, let's see. If I died in aisle 8, it might be a week before anybody actually found me. Because their service is so bad. How often do any of us need to walk into ever walk into a store where, only a small percentage of stores have their staff trained, where you actually walk in and someone looks at you, makes eye contact, and happily says, hey, how are you today? Glad you stopped in. And wasn't just trying to pitch you and direct you to things, to make your purchase and do the transaction and get you out there. It's so rare that someone actually takes the time to bond and build a relationship.
I gotta say, anytime I walk into a place and the person gives you that genuine smile, like you can see it in their eyes.
Yep.
That says, hey, welcome. You give that vibe off everything you just said. But when you actually see it in their eyes and you're like, wow, they're actually happy to be here. They're actually well taken care of. They're actually super well trained. They're actually selected with intention, with fanatical intention. Yep. And curation, right? Like you're curating the people who are going to represent your brand, which I think back in the day was more available than it is today.
I agree.
It stands out more, right? It's like it links you back to a lost time of customer service, which I hope we'll get back.
I'll give you a perfect example based on what you just said. So if it's not already obvious, yes, I am a New York kid. I came from Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, then Queens, started my career in Manhattan. So Now I'm living and working in the Midwest. This is where my wife is from. So when I first came out here, what ended up happening, we ended up going, we're going to go to a movie in a nearby mall. And, the movie we wanted to go to was going to be about maybe 45 minutes or something like that. So we were like, oh, okay, let's wander around the mall and see if there's anything. Oh, so we stopped by this sneaker place, got a pair of sneakers. A few days later, the person was very nice in the store, very good. About 3-4 days later, I get a handwritten envelope. I open this up, a handwritten note from this person that said, by the way, David, thanks so much for stopping in. Want to just check, how are you liking your sneakers or something like that? And I turned to Sherry and said, where the hell are we living? Like freaking Mayberry? What the hell is this? It was so like, I couldn't even remember the last time I ever had gotten something like that. The person took the time, small gesture, but just imagine if a brand, let's say a bigger brand, let's say a national brand, actually elevated their experience to that kind of attention to detail. It would be mind-boggling. I even took a client that I did a brand for. They were exploding, and after they reached a point where literally they showed me every day the UPS truck was filled 100% with their boxes that I had designed. Then they called me over. We were having a meeting, and I said, I now have your next assignment. They're like, what? I said, I want you to, and you guys can figure out what your threshold is that you can handle this. I said, I want you to write, because they were getting out several hundreds of orders a day, and it was like a lot of. I said, so you figure it out. What's your threshold? We determined like 75 a day. I said, great. She goes, and you're talking about, and I said, I want you to send out a communication that's like, hey, Barbara, thanks so much for this order. How was the party? How was this? How was that? Did everyone enjoy the colors or something like that? And she goes, you're talking about sending an email. I said, you send an email, I'll break your kneecaps. Everyone's sending emails.
There's the New Yorker, folks.
Absolutely. I said, no, I said, I'm going to design you this stunning card. It's going to be really cool and badass. And they're going to handwrite on the envelope, and they're going to put a freaking stamp on the envelope, doing all of that, demonstrating human interaction, human intentionality. They did that, and they maxed it out at 75 a day. That's before people got writer's cramp. And it was like sent out about 6 or 7 days after their order had actually arrived. The amount of feedback that they got, it built such loyalty. It was, how do you match that? How does a competitor match that? That's where it becomes remarkable. There's a differentiator. And you talked about familiarity earlier. That's familiarity and differentiation and intentionality. That's your triple threat right there.
Everything you're talking about now, there's so many companies, like, right? It's still the exception to the rule of companies putting in the time, putting in the effort to make these experiences. And all these words that begin with P have been floating in my brain the last 10 minutes. One is passion. My first question will be around, or my next question coming up, I like setting them up, is because the playbook is out there now, if you're paying attention to the companies who have this real intention, fanatical intention, passion, personalization, helps perception, which helps the brand and the experience to be very persuasive. So my question is, are people weaponizing that now? Or can we tell when it really is coming from that place of true passion, where the people putting out that personalized effort, that amazing brand perception of warmth and welcome and future forward thinking, which we could copy, but some brands still don't for some reason. Can we tell the difference, or does it matter?
First of all, we can totally tell a difference, and it absolutely matters. Absolutely matters. I'll give you a very, very simple example. I remember don't remember the year, but let's say the Apple stores had been out for some years at this point, and we're not far from the Mall of America, which is an enormous mall in Minneapolis. My wife and I, we were going to go there, and so I said, "Great! I'm very fascinated in how do stores present themselves to generate interest, to have a pattern interrupt, have elements that make me stop and go, and make me walk in versus me walking by. I mean, that's the make break point of retail. I go there and I knew that I was going to visit the Apple store because I was very curious to see the Apple store in the Mall of America. So I go into the Apple store and I love the experience. I love the vibe of it. I love the fact no one's coming to try and if you go walk into a Best Buy, I mean, I'll talk from my own experience. If I ever go into a Best Buy, someone's there like, "Hi, can I help you?" And what they're really saying, even though those are the words that are coming out of their mouth, it's like, "How can I help you find the product that you actually want to choose, so that I can write you up a ticket and you can actually purchase it and go over and take it to your car." That's the actual communication, even though they're saying, "How can I help you?" So it's not genuine. I go to an Apple and it's like, and they're literally like, "How can I help you?" I would say that most of retail is kind of like a teenage boy on his first date. He may be saying, "I'll drive you anywhere you want to go to," but he only has his attention on a few other things that might happen in the car. He's hoping that he gets lucky, right? So it's like they got what I call teenage boy syndrome. Most that they want to rush to the final checkout, right? And so the thing is Apple is like, they're chill. And here was the epiphany for me. I did what I needed to do in the Apple store, and then I walked down a little bit in the Mall of America, and across on the other side of that corridor area, there's a Microsoft store, which are no longer, but the Microsoft store copied Apple to a T in terms of color, in terms of white space, in terms of all that kind of stuff. And I remember walking by it. Now the Apple store is packed with people. The Microsoft store, on the other hand, is empty. And when I see, the only people that I see in there are basically the staff, and they all come out and they do this in unison together to try and get attention. Where you would walk into the store and they do this pattern. I don't know what the hell you're freaking trying to communicate to me, but obviously this is code for desperation. Maybe there's Morse code for "we are desperate, please come in." But it was just, do you even know why you're doing? If you had any self-respect for yourself as an individual, but even as a brand, why are we doing something so juvenile, stupid, and desperate? I think if everyone basically made themselves look like a split image of Bill Gates, and they made their hair like Bill Gates, they put on glasses like Bill Gates, and they dress like Bill Gates, and they look geeky like Bill Gates, and you walk there, you go, no way. You'd at least be curious and go, I got to talk to one of these guys, and then at least there would be an entertainment factor. There may not be anything else, but at least there would be a reason and a purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And it's got to be genuine from a point of, what's the nucleus of the culture? What's the change we want to bring into the world? What is the norm, the low norm, that status quo component that we're willing to challenge and say, that's a polished turd. You deserve better. We deserve better. We're willing to challenge that.
And what you're saying there around it being in the nucleus, is that the word you use?
Yep.
It's 3 letters. It's DNA. Right? And that Apple and Microsoft example was perfect. And where I asked you, does it matter if the passion is there? And we know the answer is yes. I just want to hear it in a resounding way and the way you tell the story. But the idea here is, when you're copying, that's not your DNA. You can make a clone. The clone's rarely as good as the original. But when you said, and I pictured it, all the sales agents dressed like Bill Gates, all of a sudden, that is their DNA. And that's right. Real. And that grabs your attention. You say, oh my God, they are committing to exactly their lane. Makes me think of the commercials, Apple versus PC. And the idea was, Apple knew who they were. Apple knew the meaning. We're going to get into meaning in a second. But owning your lane is a very good thing. And leaning into your own DNA is a very good starting point, isn't it?
Totally. If any of us say he or she sells like a car salesperson, that's not a compliment. That's not a good thing. That's not, ooh, a warm and fuzzy, ooh, I love that. When can we go back? Because it's shallow. because it's superficial. It's not real. We know when it's real. I'll give you the simplest example. I mean, this is just, and part of this is also just an element of embracing our humanity with one another. We have a nearby food co-op that I go to get some nice food and this, that, the other, because I really love, I enjoy cooking and I do that for my wife, myself. It's great. Well, there's one cashier. I'll talk it up a little bit when I'm checking out. And somehow we got onto the factor of music and song. And she goes, "Oh, I love singing to blah, 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 blah." I said, "Really? So what song would you sing for me right now?" And she gets all like a little flustered. I said, "Come on, you got this." And she now breaks into song as she's checking me out. And it was freaking awesome, right? I was freaking awesome. She's having a moment. I'm having a moment. Others around there are having a moment. It's a moment. To me, there is magic in refusing to let the ordinary be ordinary and demanding of it, and demanding in a way that is like a tough coach. Not demanding like, "You will," blah, blah, but it's more like, "Hey, dude, come on, you got this." And demanding of ordinariness that it be somewhat extraordinary. Why the hell not? And that to me is the magic. There's one author who I compare him to freaking warm tofu on a tabletop. It's like, wow, watching that tofu come to room temperature is super exciting. I don't know about you, but it really does something for me. But that's what I compare this particular author to. Now, why would I want to have this conversation that you and I are having right now be dull and blah, 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 and just polite and da, da, da. Okay, we're wading through it and da, 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 versus dialing it up? Because I know there's going to be a percentage of people that are going to be listening to this. There's going to be a percentage of people that are going to be watching this. There's going to be people who have probably heard some of the topics that you and I have talked about before. So you and I talked about it before we jumped on. How do we add value so that those listening to this walk away with, I have a whole new freaking level of understanding, appreciation, and actionability that I can really lean into as a result of hearing Jeff and David speak? To me, it's like, why not turn ordinary into freaking amazing? Is that too much to ask of any of us to ask of our interactions with others, with ourselves, and with the work that we do and the stuff that we put out? Why not go, holy shit, how do I light this place on fire in a good way?
If someone's taking the second to think about that question right now, what do you think they're answering to themselves? And I'm talking more the excuse-laden answers. What do you think they're telling themselves? Well, here's why. Here's why not, David.
Yeah, I think I've gotten a little lazy. I think I've gotten a little comfortable. I think I've gotten a little complacent. It's probably the first place they will probably arrive to. They may or may not go down the lane of like, well, this is why. Now, and I'll tell you some of the ones that I have heard. Well, there's not enough time to, well, first of all, who the hell said it takes time? If I'm answering a question, I will make my answer remarkable. Every element of being extraordinary does not require foreplay. Okay? Just go for it. Go for it. Surprise, delight, possibly even shock in a good way. There's good shock and there's bad shock, and there's good disruption and there's bad disruption. For everyone, and I want to make this point because I think this is critically important. Everything that you and I have been talking about over the past half hour, 40 minutes, whatever, can be done well, where people are more alive, or they can be done badly, where people are stressed and under duress and feel terrible and feel lessened and feel violated. Every one of these things that we've talked about can be done well or can be done badly. I am not encouraging that they be done badly. If it creates more space, it's right. If it creates more enthusiasm, it's right. If it creates more interaction, it's right. If it creates more, ooh, I didn't know that. I mean, like I'll have some clients who might come to me and say, hey, David, we really want something a little bit edgy, but not too edgy. I'm saying, well, let me clarify what you're actually talking about. If a brand generates confusion, that's not good edgy. But if a brand generates curiosity, That's interesting. I want to know more. That's wonderful. And so curiosity is not the same as confusion. And that's the difference between good disruption versus bad disruption. Good disruption is going to make me go, I didn't see that freaking coming. That's amazing. Bring me another, right? Or whatever, right? I want more of that. That's cool. Or what the hell made you do that? That was astonishing, right? I mean, trust me, the people that were standing there seeing me encourage her to sing and her breaking into song and were standing there, they weren't going, I'm confused. I thought I was just supposed to be here and check out. I don't think anybody responded that way. People were like, this is freaking amazing. I thought I was just going to check out, buy my crap today. But instead, I attended a performance. That was astonishing. So all disruption is not created equal, Let's elevate people to being curious. Let's elevate people to saying, wow. And here's a great one. Let's elevate people where they ask this, how come nobody else thought of doing this? That is your $64,000 payoff right there. That's the one where you go, yes, we are badass.
Oh man, in my 20 years in advertising and marketing, when I see the ad or the campaign that is so amazing, it's the reverse. I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So you just touched on something, the 5 keywords of business, the 5 keywords of this podcast, the 5 keywords of anything. Do you know what you said?
Tell me.
I want more of that.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the cover of my first book. Is that cool? I was going to say that's going to be the title of your next book. But that's the point, people. That's the point. When you actually put meaningful contrast out there, when you put meaningful connection out there, you will have meaningful conversion again and again, because there's conviction there and there's a real sense of, I took the note of being disingenuine, people can tell. And when you're genuine, people can tell. And I don't even want to say authentic and real. Like, I don't mind the word real. Authentic's overused right now. But when you're actually genuine, you're actually taking the time and the space and the place to put in an experience that people say, wow, I want more of that. That's the key to all of it. And it gives your brand, and I'm going to use your words here, meaning. And meaning is way more important than marketing, because the marketing will take care of itself if the meaning is baked into the brand. We know the order: brand, marketing, sales. If you want to hear more about David on that, go look at his books. He'll talk to you about it. Maybe he can talk about it now. Let's start to land this plane on the idea of meaning. Where do you stand on the idea that brands vary, and companies and businesses and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and founders and C-suites and everyone who might be listening to this, they get so caught up on facts and forgetting that facts tell, but stories sell. They get so caught up on products and services and specs versus actually putting meaning into what they're doing. And like when we go back to the Apple example, when I'm opening that, they've told me an entire story just in that swoosh. They've told me an entire story about the details. They've told me an entire story, and they know that how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to impart meaning to my purchase, my status, that I got the latest device, that I made the right choice, and it just solidifies my choice. Tell me more about meaning and the idea that brands are not only how people feel about the brand, but it's about how the brand makes them feel.
About 6 weeks ago, I did this post because I was just toying with it. And it basically was, someone had asked me, David, they weren't familiar with me. And so they were like, David, tell us about you. So I basically said this, that, well, I'm David Brier. I'm the guy that CEOs call when they've burned so much cash on marketing, their spouses think they have a coke habit. I'm like rehab for your brand, except instead of getting you clean, I get you profitable. Think of me as the Betty Ford Clinic of branding, but with better ROI and no group hugs, right? So now that, of course, everyone's laughing their asses off. Who the hell describes themselves in that way? It's completely unforgettable. Told a story. Rather than, Well, I'm the guy. I've been doing branding for over 4 decades and generate over $9 billion. It was just all true, but it doesn't have that kind of. There's a word that I will occasionally use, and it's called swagger. It's like, when someone walks into a room and they own it. Now, it doesn't mean that they're obnoxious. It doesn't mean that they're overbearing, but it's just kind of like they know their lane. They know their zone where they add value. They know their place where they add meaning. Their assessment of that is pretty spot on, right? Now, if someone's assessment isn't spot on, that's where we look at somebody and we go, oh, they're being too much this or too much that, or, it just feels a little bit, just not quite in line with who and what they are. All of these things align to meaning for me, that kind of swagger. For some people, they might be, well, I'm from Tennessee, blah, 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 blah. And then you go, freaking, I love this person. They're in their lane, man. They're cool. Many years ago, I ran into Isaac Hayes, and he was like, hey, man, I'm Isaac Hayes. It's like, you freaking are, dude. It's like, I'd never question that. You are. And so it's just that real, do you own your mojo? I just want people to own their mojo, own your shit. Some people, I'm not, I'm a little more shy, a little more reserved. Well, if you're going to be shy and reserved, then freaking be the most badass shy and reserved person there ever was on the planet. Just be that. If that's what you're going to be that. It's why we celebrate, an actor like Billy Bob Thornton, or why we celebrate an actor like Christopher Walken, or different actors and actresses or different people or personas, because they are just who they are, or the entrepreneurs who are who they are.
I think we gravitate to that energy because it's so rare. And
I agree with you.
I took the note here. You are be who you are. So everything we're talking about, be real, genuinely want an awesome experience. Consider what will light people up, not in a weaponized way, the way that makes them say, I want more of that, because that's who you are. That's who your company is. That's what you do. And it doesn't stop at the product and the service and the materials and how much RAM and all that kind of thing. It's everything wrapped up into that.
Out of curiosity, I'm curious. Do you happen to know Claude Silver?
Nope.
Gary Vaynerchuk's chief heart officer, Claude Silver.
Okay, I've heard, but no, I don't know.
Okay, this from the back. There's Claude, right there. There's Claude. Anyway, the thing is that Claude, chief heart officer. So Gary and they came up with they were the first ones to come up with that title, and other people have loved it. And now there's a lot of people I'd heard over the years, you as well, I'm sure have heard. We've heard about heart-centered leadership and this and that. She was the first person that I spoke to. I remember when she and I mean, it was so genuine. She wasn't trying to impress me. She wasn't trying to be a gratitude-enriched individual. She just was. And we've become very close friends. She's a dear, darling. So real. That's, if anybody wants to just see, well, what is, if anybody's asking themselves, who's listening to this, going, well, what does reality seem like? If you are, so you've seen Jeff and I think Jeff has been very real in this conversation. I have tried to be real in this conversation. If you want to see totally different lane, you can find some videos of Claude Silver, totally different vibe, but so real. It is just, she impressed the hell out of me, and we just got on really, 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 really well. We just there's just a synergy there. But real is real. When people go, well, what is real? If you have to ask yourself that, because it shouldn't be a mystery. It's not a secret hidden ingredient in some exotic land that you have to maybe if you pay $10,000 to this special, excursion team that will take you to this far off land, and then you'll be able to it's not mysterious. Real is real. Everyone has experienced at least a few, hopefully more, that are real. And you feel it, man. It's kind of like good coffee. You don't want to spit it out.
I feel the real.
Yep.
when you're thinking about that stuff. The
Yeah.
way you just lit up, the way your eyes are remembering Claude and that interaction, and just all the interactions you've had with people who have figured it out, or even brands who have figured it out. That's like the top of the hill, isn't it?
I am very fortunate. I'm very, very, very fortunate to have remarkable people in my life. My wife being one of them. I never in a million years would have thought that my perfect wife would be from the Midwest who grew up on a farm. I was a city kid, man. I thought perfect girl, wife, girlfriend, partner, whatever, however I thought of it, younger would be like this and look like this and behave like this and be from here and da 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 da. Those are all suppositions. But as I went through life and this, that, the other, and then I just got to see I mean, my wife is one of the funniest people. She would probably never describe herself this way, but she knows she always makes me laugh. Not that she's trying to. She's not like some talk show host who's trying to be entertaining to me, or some freaking, LA mansion where someone is like, it's so nice to see you. Oh, hello, David. It's so nice to see you here today. It's not that kind of vibe. It's just genuine. It's genuine. It's real. It's from the heart. There aren't layers of digging down. It's like there's no social veneer to have to crack through. When it's good, it melts in your hands like yummy chocolate. It's yummy.
I get that feeling from you. I feel
Yeah.
like you have a superpower of finding essence and soul.
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to let that sit actually for a second. Take us out here. 40 years of disrupting and influencing the branding and marketing industry. Give me your best genuine guess on the next 4 years and the next 40 years. What is going to disrupt or continue to help brands disrupt and influence the world that we're playing in?
Totally. I would say that right now we're in about every 10 years or so, there's a big disruption that changes how we do business, how we do different things. The internet was one of those. Prior to that, for those that have been around for a while, there was the fax machine. Ooh, that changed how we all did business, man. We didn't have to print out a thing and fold it up and put it in an envelope and actually forfeit some of our saliva on the edge of the freaking thing to seal the thing, and then forfeit it again on the back of a stamp. Boom. And then wait 3 or 4 days for it to arrive in the mail, hopefully. And we could actually get a communication over to someone in 6 or 7 minutes, dude. It changed everything. So there's always been these kind of pivotal things. It's been very, very amusing to watch in retrospect. We're at, I think, that another point with what's happening with AI. I think AI is a terrific tool if it's understood as a tool. I think it's a terrific liability if it's thought of as a crutch and a dependency that actually replaces people. It replaces tasks, but it doesn't replace people. With that being said, I would say what's going to happen is over the next 2 to 4 years, the most human brands who know how to really, really leverage that asset will be remarkable, will be noteworthy, will be a force that no machine can ever replicate, period. We've got soul. We have heart. We have a pulse. We have dreams. We have aspirations. We have frustrations. We have things that annoy us, that make us strive for something better. Those are brilliant, amazing things. So to me, there's going to be a human evolution and a human revolution coming back to what makes us uniquely great, that makes us see around corners, that makes us achieve the impossible, that makes us challenge and say, why the hell not? Why does it always, why is this standard being tolerated? Why can't we do better? And that's what I see over the next handful of years. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting advances. But that's my immediate prediction.
I thank you for that. I thank you for this conversation. And I have 5 words for you. I want more of this. Will you come back sometime?
Absolutely. I had a blast. This was fun, man. This was just a lot of good, deep, heartfelt interaction. And absolutely, man, I had a blast. This is great.
Stay tuned, friends. David's coming back. Catch you later, David.
Catch you later, man. Thank you, Jeff. The conversation that Jeff and I just had was one of the most heartfelt and just really connected conversations that I've had on a podcast. Great questioner, great listener. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And it would mean the world to me if you subscribed and if you shared this around. Share this with colleagues and those who you mentor. There's a lot of really important topics that we covered. And thanks again for your support.